What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee and Toys here. It's Marvel Monday, and that means we are reviewing issue number 3 of the GI Joe A Real American Hero run published by Marvel Comics. That's right, every Monday on the channel we review the A Real American Hero run from Marvel Comics, the original GI Joe series that launched GI Joe into the 80s and beyond. And wow, we've had some fun so far on this channel. So, if you do recall, last issue, issue 2, we were introduced to Quinn. We saw the GI Joe team go to the North Pole, I believe it was, on a mission where they met Quinn. They had to, Quinn thwarted them at every turn, and eventually the GI Joe team did manage to, at the end of the issue, regain their weaponry, and we're going to actually stop the Russians from, and to prevent them from leaving with the modulator and the American intel that had been provided by Quinn. And we also learned that Quinn is not necessarily a bad guy or a good guy. So, that was last week. This week, into issue 3, we are going to bring the main bad guys of GI Joe, Cobra. That's right, Cobra is back in issue 3. So, let's just jump right into it and let's talk about GI Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 3. But before we get too far into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe, hit that bell notification set to all notifications. Every Monday I cover the next issue of the GI Joe Real American Hero series, and on Fridays I actually cover new GI Joe comics, so that includes A Real American Hero, that includes Cobra Commander, Duke, the upcoming Destro and Scarlet issues, and on Saturdays I do my normal toy reviews, so you might see something from Marvel Legends, GI Joe, Classified, Star Wars, you name it, it's up for grabs if it's something that I enjoy collecting. And then on Sundays, I do something really special where I actually unbox and review vintage/classic GI Joes, where I actually have purchased GI Joes anywhere from 1982 to 2016, and I unbox them. So you might get to see something really crazy. I actually just got a shipment in of a whole bunch of vintage 82 to 94 figures. Actually, I should take that back. They're about 90 to 94 figures. And I'm going to be unboxing some of those on the channel very soon, so stay tuned to that. That is on Sundays. But for those of you not familiar with me, my name's Mark. I'm with Coffee and Toys, and I do all the things I just told you about. Anything that, scratches that nostalgia itch is what I do. And I also drink coffee. So for those who's wondering today, the coffee is Green Mountain Vermont Blend. This is a medium roast, so a blend of coffees. And it's kind of just a go-to for me. I am always preferential to medium roast, and it's a nice, easy cup of coffee to down, and I drink way too much of it. So it's actually, you can find it anywhere. You can find it at Walmart, Target, Keurig.com. You can get this stuff pretty cheap. I think it's something like 80 cents a pod. I use the K-Cups for these particular ones. So that is what I'm drinking today. And speaking of drinking, I am going to take a drink right now while you hit that like button. And let's just get into issue 3, GI Joe, A Real American Hero. Okay, GI Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 3, published date September of 1982. Entitled The Trojan Gambit. Of course, it is written by the fabulous Larry Hama. Penciler Herb Trimp. Yes, Herb Trimp is returning to issue number 3. Inkers J. Abel and D. Agostino. Make sure I'm saying that right. Letterer Diana Albers. Colorer George Russos. And editor Tom DeFalco. So, first page. We jump in with GI Joe team reporting to General Flagg that they have secured the Cobra stronghold and are dismantling this massive robot. General Flagg tells the GI Joe team, get the robot back to the pit. We're going to analyze it. We're going to see what Cobra was up to. We are bringing in 3 mail trucks that we will put the various pieces of the robot in, and you will bring it back to the pit. GI Joe team arrives at the chaplain's assistant motor pool, which of course is the facade for the GI Joe pit, as the pit is located underground beneath the chaplain's assistant's motor school, or motor pool rather, and it's lower down, each mail truck with parts of the robot inside. Elsewhere, Cobra Commander is watching with pleasure and states that Phase 1 is now complete and Phase 2 is the real tricky part. So, kind of establishing that this was the plan all along for GI Joe to infiltrate this stronghold, capture this robot. So the robot we have is laid out on a table with Breaker, Clutch, and Steeler working on it. Hawk and Scarlet show up and say, hey, we have a tea party up top for all the head honchos that we have to attend. So take care of all the stuff down here. Scarlet and I will be up on the top level, above the pit. Scarlet and Hawk are up there impressing the military brass, while Clutch, Steeler, and Breaker, they decided it's been pretty rough. They're going to make some breakfast. So they're in the canteen. They're making breakfast, and it actually showcases some pictures of the aroma from the bacon and eggs actually making its way up through the ventilation system to the tea party that's going on upstairs. So the robot's out on the table. Clutch, Breaker, and Steeler are working on it, examining it, and Snake Eyes, Stalker, and Flash are in the armory. They've taken all the weapons and stuff, and they're taking care of putting it all away. They're putting away all the ammo, all the weapons. Snake Eyes is actually cleaning everyone's weapons, and Stalker kind of makes a comment, says, I wonder why Snake Eyes always insist on cleaning everybody's weapons. And Flash says because he doesn't want your gun to jam on you when you're supposed to be protecting him, giving him cover fire. So I thought that was pretty well written there. I enjoyed that a lot. We go back to the Secret Cobra location, which is their helicopter, which we've seen in other issues. And the Cobra Tech tells Cobra Commander that the chemical timer inside the robot's right hand is due to activate in 30 seconds. Cobra Commander states that the robot should be inside or near the heart of the command center, and that it's really, really shielded in that area. And the goal of the robot is to actually get out from the command center, and once it can get high enough out of the pit from underground, it will be able to set off its homing beacon and alert Cobra to where the pit is so that they can make that attack on the GI Joe base. They'll know where it's finally at. Now, Cobra Commander says Phase 3 is going to start, and the robot has actually, its hand has started moving around, and it's going up to a computer and it's typing on it, and suddenly we see that all the doors to the armory where Snake Eyes, Stalker, and Flash are at, the doors to the canteen where Steeler, Breaker, and Clutch are at, they slam shut and they can't open them. And the robot has implemented Phase 3. The robot's going to actually come back to life. The hand goes back, it starts rebuilding itself, and it is now going to try to exit the depths of the pit to be able to set off this homing beacon and let Cobra Command know where the pit is located. So we cut back, we see that the Steeler, Clutch, and Breaker are locked into the canteen, and Clutch is saying it's probably just a computer glitch, we'll get this figured out in a few minutes. And Steeler's like, no, I don't buy that. Something's going on. And then what's actually pretty funny is Steeler, it shows a panel of Steeler actually taking off his shirt. And he goes up to the panel beside the door that has the counterweights in it that are used to keep the door closed. And in an impressive feat of strength, Steeler actually manages to lift the weights up enough that the door starts to slide open, and they have Clutch put a folding chair in the door to keep it open so he can release the counterweights, and then they still have enough room to get out of the area, out of the canteen. We cut back to the arms room where Snake Eyes, Stalker, and Flash are at, and Flash is gearing up in his outfit, and he's like, hey, I can cut through this with my laser, it's just going to take a little bit of time. And Stalker and Snake Eyes say, okay, you go to it, we're just going to kind of chill out over here on the side because with these doors locked shut, we do have a limited supply of air in this room. At least that's what they say, which is weird because there's vents, but whatever. And that's what they're going to do. They're just going to chill out, let Flash do his thing. The other three Joes, meanwhile, are running towards the computer room. They have gotten out of the canteen, and upon entering, they are fired on by the fully functional 10-foot-tall robot. And they escape. They can't. They try to get to the arms room. They can't get in because it's locked, and Flash hasn't cut through the door. So the three Joes that have escaped have no weapons, and they are unsure how they are going to stop this robot from, wreaking havoc on the base, not knowing that its ultimate goal is just to get out of the base to set off that homing beacon. So Clutch says, hey, I've got an idea, and he runs to the lavatory, and he grabs some shaving cream, or some aftershave. He even makes the comment that this stuff is the worst, like the smell of it. Clutch comes back, he has a flare and the aftershave, and he uses it essentially as a flamethrower or a flame grenade and just lights the robot on fire, puts fire all over it, hoping to disrupt the robot in some sort of way to slow it down. Cobra Commander, meanwhile, states that the robot is going to keep fighting its way through the command center until it finally gets outside of the dampeners, and then it'll finally allow them to be able to know where the base is. And while all this is going on, recall, we have Scarlet and Hawk up top. At this point, we see that the members, earlier they were saying they smelled bacon and eggs. Now they're saying they smell something that smells like an electrical fire. And the whole thing of Hawk and Scarlet up there is to keep their cover from being blown. Not that they're part of the GI Joe team. They're just military brass like anybody else. Part of the chaplain's assistant motor pool. And they're like, oh, Hawk's like, no, electrical fire, it can't be that. And he comes up with some lame excuse, to be frank about it. Get him to stop talking about it, don't worry, enjoy another drink kind of thing. And he actually does, I think he actually says, I have it written here, he says, you're probably just smelling the mess hall. You should be glad you're barely smelling it, because it's a lot worse than electrical or fire. The three Escape Joes, meanwhile, they can't seem to find the 10-foot tall robot that's on fire, is what Clutch says. And they wind up going to the training area, and they walk into the room. There's nothing in there. All they see is the wreck pool, and they go, well, nothing in here. But before they can leave the room, the robot emerges from the water. Of course, it has put itself out since it was on fire, and it begins trying to attack the three GI Joe members. They decide, hey, we are going to get on the elevator and we're going to start heading up a few floors, not realizing that the robot's going to essentially want to do the same thing. So the robot is following them by climbing up the actual elevator cables that they had just used. The Joe members actually stop at the level that has like their heavy artillery. So it's got the tanks, it's got the laser cannons, it's got, all those things. But again, there's no ammo. The ammo is not in the vehicles, it is in the armory. And we know that the armory is locked up tight right now. So they get the idea. They're like, okay, this robot's climbing up. Let's drop one of the laser cannons on top of it. So you actually see them pull over the laser cannon, and they drop it down the shaft. But the robot manages to swing down into the floor below, and it drops past him and misses him. So the GI Joe members with no ammo, no weapons, they basically say, we got to just try to get away from this thing. And the robot continues to chase them, and they can hear him coming up the stairwell. Following at the robot enters the room with the GI Joe team, and Steeler says, hey, they've managed to find silver paint and aluminum foil that's used for chaff. And they have this idea, hey, we can do this. We can use this stuff against the robot. So they throw the silver paint on the robot's face, which it can't see with its visuals, and they put a whole bunch of aluminum foil on the floor, which they say disrupts the radar that it uses to also move around if it doesn't have vision. And so the robot's stumbling around, and they have taken the aluminum foil and they have placed it over the hydraulic lift for the vehicles that takes them down to the lower levels. They've put it all the way down to the bottom floor. They've covered it with the foil. The robot steps on the foil, falls straight down to the fifth or sixth floor, I can't remember what it was, of the pit, and just disintegrates into pieces. It just busts apart. And even another, back up top, another person at the party says something to the effect of, I just heard something that sounded like a tank loaded with anvils fell off a cliff, describing the noise they just heard. And Hawk again comes up with some excuse, and he says, nope, that's just a sonic phenomenon that, you didn't really hear anything. And Scarlet's looking at Hawk like, dude, something's going on downstairs, and we need to check it out. And Hawk's like, he pulls her aside and he says, no, can't blow our cover. The Joe team will take whatever's going on down there. They're going to take care of it. So the helicopter for Cobra, meanwhile, is still in its location, wherever that's at. And the Cobra tech basically says, we are very low on fuel, Cobra Commander. We need to go. Cobra Commander says, we are not leaving until the absolute final moment. I believe this robot will get the job done for Cobra. Now remember, it's laying in the bottom of the pit now, smashed into a million pieces. So finally, Snake Eyes, Stalker, and Flash do get out. He cuts through the door of the armory, and those Joe team members meet up with Steeler, Breaker, and Clutch. And suddenly, they're all looking at the robot smashed up. Suddenly, the robot has tentacles grow out of it, the base of its head. And it starts scurrying off, and it's trying to get out through the elevator shaft to, again, to set off that homing beacon. And so they're like, we have got to stop this thing. And Flash expertly pinpoints the head, shoots it with his laser rifle, and it falls back down once again to the bottom of the pit. Clang, it's there. And suddenly these little mechanical bugs come out of the head. And these are actually the homing beacons. These are actual these electronic bugs are actually beacons, and they start going everywhere. So Breaker is trying to start the computer systems again, because that will be able to turn on the sensors in the base and figure out where everything's at that shouldn't be there, all these bugs. And meanwhile, Stalker's smashing them with the butt of his gun. Other GI Joes are smashing him. Snake Eyes is shooting them, and they're trying to stop all these bugs. So finally, the system comes online. They're like, great, we can get the rest of them, and one gets away. And Breaker's like, oh my gosh, it's going up top right now. It's going to complete the mission. Well, they don't know it's going to complete the mission, but, it looks like it's going to complete the mission. The Cobra the Cobra helicopter, the technician says, Cobra Commander, we have 3 minutes left before we have the potential of not even being able to make it back to our base. And Cobra Commander's like, use the full 3 minutes. We're going to be fine. The bug gets up through the vents. Someone at the tea party sees the bug and in a very comical fashion screams, it's a bug, it's an insect, which is strange. I don't know why somebody would be that freaked out about a little tiny bug, because it's not very big. But anyway, this person makes this huge exclamation, and Scarlet walks over and with the heel of her foot crushes the last remaining bug/transmitter. And that essentially ends the issue. We do get a final panel of Hawk talking to Scarlet, and he says, maybe I'm pushing the GI Joe team a little too hard, and they need a little extra R&R. And with a quip, Scarlet says, yes, they certainly have been buggy lately. And that's the end of GI Joe issue number 3 of the Marvel comic run. It was a fun issue. It was fun to see what the GI Joe team needs to do when they don't have their weapons and how they have to be resourceful. And I think that's kind of what it's supposed to teach us, or we're supposed to learn about the characters, that they don't always need their weapons to pull out the victory. It was a little silly. There's some back and forth banter that was enjoyable. Not the funnest issue compared to the first issue and the second issue. Not nearly, no gunfighting. I guess that's the whole point of this issue, is there's no gunfighting and stuff like that. It's more about using their brains to stop this robot. And we get a little bit, we get to see that Cobra Command is using technology to try to figure out how to defeat the Joes. So that's kind of fun. It was a fun issue. I'm sure if I was a kid reading it that first time, I would have loved seeing this huge, ginormous robot wreaking havoc on the pit and saying, what are the G.I. Joes going to do? But overall, it was a fun issue. I'm not going to say it was my favorite by far because, I'm all about actual Cobra fighting Joe, not big robots fighting Joe. But we've seen that in the G.I. Joe cartoon, and we've seen it elsewhere in the comics. But yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed this video, because that's pretty much where we end this review. If you did enjoy it, make sure you leave a like. Drop me a comment. Were you one of those individuals that, are you old enough that you actually bought this issue on the newsstands? Because I'd be interested to know. It came out in September of '82. I wasn't quite yet on this planet. So I have one more month to go. So issue 4 will be really fun for me, because that should be the one that came out in October '82, which is my birth year and month. So with that being said, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys, and I'll talk to you later.